In today's episode of the Pathmark Presents podcast, I have a very interesting guest here with me today. I'm with Lucy Burningham, and she's hailing over as the Director of Marketing and Communications at CartHook. And if you're heading over to carthook.com, you can learn much more about how CartHook is adding post-purchase offers. And today, we really want to dive into what that means, who is benefiting from this technology, and also how Lucy is thinking about growth for CartHook. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Lucas. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Awesome. Yeah. Give us, the 360 overview. I sort of tipped my toes into it and learned a little bit about it. Like, what is CartHook all about?
Yeah, so we are a Shopify app, which means we let Shopify merchants, which as you and your listeners probably know, is one of the largest e-commerce platforms in the world. We have more than 1 million stores currently on Shopify. We let Shopify merchants offer their customers post-purchase upsells. And in case you're not familiar with what that means, a post-purchase upsell shows to the customer after they have completed their purchase. So let's say your customer just purchased a pair of shoes. An upsell app like CartHook lets you display an additional product to the customer, like socks, after they check out and before they see the thank you page. And this is really just such a sweet spot because it's this moment where customers kind of have this euphoria. I don't know about you, Lucas, but after I buy something, I'm kind of like, I'm excited. It feels good. I'm ready for it to arrive. And getting kind of an additional little upsell offer can be such a powerful way for Shopify merchants to increase their AOV. They already have this customer. They're not risking that initial conversion. Add something to their order and instantly, they get this nice little revenue and AOV boost.
Very interesting. Cool. I mean, it's quite clear, obviously, which type of customers are using it. Obviously, Shopify, businesses that are leveraging Shopify, but maybe tell us a little bit more about the companies. Like what type of e-commerce companies actually benefit the most? Because obviously there's a various, range of e-commerce businesses. Who is actually benefiting the most from?
Right. It's such a good question, one that we get a lot. We work with kind of every vertical that you can think of. There's sort of always an opportunity for an upsell, but we really, really see a lot of success for things like beauty and wellness, consumables, like any kind of consumable, right? Let's say somebody orders a box of cereal, an upsell to another box of cereal is kind of a great way to add something to the order, something they're going to consume, right? But at the same time, we've seen a lot of success with luxury goods. So, like I mentioned those shoes earlier, we've had a bunch of kind of high-end luxury shoe merchants selling, and they can add something like a shoe cleaning kit or even another pair of shoes for a deep, deep discount. So we kind of work across all verticals. But the thing I will add to that is we really are for Shopify merchants who understand their store and their customers. Sometimes we've had merchants who are just starting out and they kind of don't have their funnels fully optimized, not fully dialed. It's a little trickier, I think, to work with CartHook in that sense of you're just not sure where your customer's coming from, how much they're spending. You need to kind of, know the basics of your store before you're adding an upsell.
Okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. And who within those companies, who within those e-commerce companies is actually bringing up, CartHook? Is that like, somebody in the UX side of things? Is it a data scientist that says, hey, we actually need more conversions here? Is that a product manager? Is that the founders who is, reaching out?
Again, there's a range, but it's often marketers, the marketing department, they're spending money on acquiring those customers and looking at their journey through their funnel. And to be able, again, to increase that AOV is something everyone is trying to do right now. I mean, the cost of acquisition for customers, spending ads on Facebook, trying to get people into your store, those costs are just going up and up and up. So to be able to offset that and just create new revenue, marketers love it. Also founders, some of these stores are still kind of lean and small and founders talk to each other. They're in Facebook groups, they're in Slack groups. They're constantly asking each other, what tools are you using to be successful? So we see a lot of traffic from word of mouth and founders who are just talking to each other about kind of how they're setting up their store.
Yeah, makes a whole lot of sense. Now, how do these folks actually hear about CartHook? I know you're obviously working very deeply with the Shopify market, but how do they hear initially about you guys? Like, what is, in other words, what is the key client acquisition channels that you guys are already?
Yeah. So the Shopify app world is kind of its own ecosystem. I believe there's more than 5,000 apps now. So these are all things, you can add to your store to optimize your store, make it better, make it look better, perform better, do the things you need, shipping, fulfillment, SMS, marketing, all of that stuff. So within Shopify, people often find us, right? We recently became a Shopify Plus certified app, which means Shopify, the organization, recommends us to their largest merchants. We are an app for these larger merchants who really are looking to optimize their stores in the best possible way. So kind of within the Shopify ecosystem, people find us. Organic search, we have a very strong brand name. We've been kind of in the space for more than 5 years, I think, although our Shopify app is new as of last November. So we have that brand awareness, which is great. We try to leverage that as much as possible. We put lots of great content out. People find us through content, partner marketing. We work with a lot of these other Shopify apps to really promote each other, blog posts, gated content, podcasts, webinars. We kind of try to spread ourselves across the Shopify universe.
Interesting. I mean, with that sort of, like in the Shopify world, like what role do you attribute to the website? Like how do you as a marketer think about the role of CartHook.com for the growth?
Yeah, it's a good question, and one that's interesting and a little tricky for most Shopify apps, because customers cannot sign up for our app on our website. They have to go into the Shopify app ecosystem to do that. So all of our CTAs point to the Shopify listing that we have, which has a great kind of summary of what CartHook is, an explainer video, kind of a really succinct overview of why merchants need CartHook to increase their AOV and their revenue. So our goal is to get that organic traffic, and our funnel is just a little bit longer than it would be if we were not in the Shopify app ecosystem. So there's some tricky parts about ad funnels and kind of tracking all of that movement through, but just adds a fun, exciting challenge. You know how that goes.
Yep, no, makes sense. Now mentioning that, like, where do you currently think? I mean, that's obviously one thing that you brought up, the flow going through the Shopify app. But on other terms, like what do you think is sort of like a strength of the website, versus where do you personally even see room for improvement? Because most marketers we have on the show are always very critical. They always want to bring it to the next level. Like
always for improvement,
where do you see
always.
sort of the room for improvement versus the strength of the company?
Yeah, so the strength really is in the design. We designed this website to look sort of like a D2C brand and a direct to consumer brand. We wanted it to really resonate with our ideal customer and let them know that we understand them. We understand the importance of branding. Our post-purchase offers will fit into their branding and their strategy. So we really went heavy on making it kind of a distinctive site. We didn't want to just look boring, like every other sort of financial site or Shopify app site. So really wanted to connect with our ideal customers. Through that, sometimes I'm feeling like the copy's a little sparse, especially for SEO. Next year, we're definitely going to be working on some SEO juicing and really, getting people to the site for those keywords that we want. Because the site is brand new, we launched it in November of 2020. I feel like we have some optimization to do, but I am really proud of so many elements of the site. It's mixed, proud of it and room for improvement.
Cool. I mean, as a marketer, you've been in very interesting roles. You've been obviously with Nike, with Cozy. You've been in very interesting roles there. Along that journey, like we talked about the website just a second ago, what have you, learned about that? What maybe tools, methodologies, approaches on how to figure out why people do or do not converge on the websites to getting started?
Yeah, I'm always learning, right? I feel like there's always a new tool. There's always a new way to look at things. And the thing that I keep coming back to is really relying on your data. I think I and so many marketers tend to come up with our own assumptions or like our gut instinct about things. And when you can break that mindset and say, why am I saying that? Why do I think that? Do I actually have the proof? Do I actually have the data? That's when you can really optimize in a smart and efficient way. So it's a challenge for me. I love my instincts, like, no, I'm sure this Facebook ad color, but the button won't convert if it's blue. But until you have that data, you can't really make those assumptions and like make any really meaningful changes.
Makes sense. I mean, now just one question, which actually it's something that has been just recently coming up on the show quite a bit. And feel free to let me know if that's nothing you've been already engaging with. I mean, how do you, and because you're in the Shopify world, e-commerce being, large on, obviously retargeting and advertising, how do you look at, the cookieless future coming in mid next year? Is that something you're already thinking? Is that something more, for the beginning of the year to look at? Maybe what's your perspective on it?
It's interesting. I'm still kind of trying to wrap my brain around it for what CartHook means, but how I really think about it is for our merchants, right? So because e-commerce merchants rely so much on cookies and it's such an essential part of their ad spend and how they function, we're really at CartHook looking at ways we can support them through these changes. And because of the way our app works and it operates after the customer converts, I really think it's even more of an important tool than it was before cookie apocalypse started to happen. It's something reliable in your own checkout, in your own store, a place where you can add new revenue and boost your AOV without worrying about cookies.
It's super interesting because, I mean, you before the step that even would go away, and then you would need that third-party cookies, right? It's very interesting, actually. For people who are listening in, I think it's quite interesting to explore that a little bit. What are strategies that you could apply and little steps in the buyer's journey? And this is definitely one of them. Very cool. Great. I want to switch gears a little bit and get to know you a little bit, Lucy. We talked a lot about growth and different, techniques and methodologies. I would like to know, how do you personally consume content? Like, where do you go to educate yourself? What are your sort of top, places, resources where you like to, keep on educating yourself?
Such a good question. I will say there are so many amazing newsletters for e-commerce merchants and Shopify apps. I am a huge consumer of newsletters. I'm very interested in Substack and kind of that subscriber model for newsletters. And just watching, the ebbs and flows of how people consume content. I definitely go down some rabbit holes on social media. I love Twitter. I love Instagram. I do the scrolling. But I really, I'm fascinated by how brands are talking to people. My background is in journalism, so I'm interested in narratives and storytelling and kind of the overall brand building. How are people really connecting with consumers? What kind of content speaks to people? It's shifting and changing so quickly. It's so much fun to follow. Anyway, that was kind of a vague answer to your question, but maybe the answer is I'm all over the place.
I mean, that's exactly what this is all about here, to learn like where people actually, how they go through the information. Very cool. I have some rapid fire questions to wrap it up for today. Are you ready for those?
Let's do it. I'm so ready.
Cool. What's the last book you read?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay, I'm trying to.
Alternatively, last podcast you listened to. That would be fine as
well. Okay. Last book I read, it's called The Lager Queen of Minnesota. It's a novel. I used to be, as I mentioned, I was a journalist and wrote about beer. So I love all things beer. So somehow this is a novel about women going into the beer industry, starting in the 1950s in the Midwest of the United States. So I happened upon this novel and I loved it. It was so much fun to read.
What's one single thing your company is focused on the most at the moment?
Oh, acquiring new customers. I mean, that's such a generic answer, right? Isn't that what we're all doing as marketers? But since we're a newish app, and this concept of a post-purchase offer native to the Shopify checkout is new, we are educating people. People don't even know that we exist. They don't even know that this amazing tool exists for them. So we are just out there trying to spread the word and help people understand why they need to try CartHook.
If there would be no boundaries in technology, everything is possible, what would be the one thing you would fix for your role today?
Oh my gosh, that is such a great question. What is the one thing I would fix? Can I bend space and time?
Everything is possible.
I feel like I constantly need more time. Maybe I would clone myself. I would clone myself so that I could do more things and, be more efficient. There's never enough time.
And for the very last question, I would like to do some time travel, if you would allow. So we would go back to the days of Portland State, right? And then you're heading off into your world of, as you were mentioning, you were writing for a very long time. What's the one advice you would give for yourself for your journey in, content and marketing?
I would tell myself to enjoy the ride and expect the unexpected. I'm a planner, I like to have a clear idea of where I'm headed, what my goals are, how to accomplish them. But that's not exactly how life works. So I would tell myself to kind of be ready for anything, and that's part of the fun.
Lucy, I really appreciate you took the time with us today to be a guest on PathFund Presents. I want to give you the very last word. If somebody would be forgetting all that we discussed about CartHook, what's the one thing that they should remember?
They should remember that CartHook is the best way for Shopify merchants to increase their AOV and create new revenue.
Thanks a lot.
Yes.
Thanks a lot. Perfect. Thanks a lot for being a guest on PathFund Presents.
Lucas, thanks for having me. It was great.